Right, so now we can start with the lighting. So what I'm going to do for that is that I'm going to be going inside my camera first. Let me first create two viewports. I'm just going to right click right here and I'm going to create a vertical split. So this is going to create two viewports for us. In the left one, we're just going to look at our scene. So I'm just going to go inside the rendered view and we can. Now be sure to keep saving your project because Blender can crash at any time. It does have it does tend to crash quite a lot. So I'm just going to be pressing Control B on my keyboard and I'm just going to be setting this render region so that it renders faster. And I'm going to be turning off these viewport guides right here as well. Let me close this. Right. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to be creating let me try two things. So we basically have two ways to light this. The first one is to add an area light. This area light is going to be right here. If I just move it right there, scale it up, something like that. Move it up. And then maybe move it down a little bit. And then we can rotate it in the x-axis, something like that. So that it basically lights our scene. So the problem with this currently is that it is way too white and it's way too dark. So I'm just going to increase the power to something like 1000 watts. That looks much better. However, the problem with this is that it looks way too white and it looks way too unrealistic and unnatural. So I'm going to set it to just an ever so slightly yellowish color. So that's more of a sunlight effect. So there's this is your first option, right? You can even scale it down if you want some harsher shadows. Now you're going to see the shadows are going to become much harsher. So you have that option. Also, by the way, we forgot to add textures to our floor and the walls. So I'm just going to do that before we move on to the lighting. So let me just first do that, because obviously if your floor and the walls are darker, then it's going to require more light, because darker surfaces generally reflect less light. So your textures and the colors of your textures matter a lot. So I'm just going to do that first. Just wait for it to compile the textures. Alright, so now what we can do is that we can select this cube, go into edit mode. Actually, let me first just let me first not go into edit mode and let me just add one material to this, which is going to be for the walls. So I'm just going to name this wall, right? And then I'm going to create another material slot, and I'm going to create a new material in this. I'm just going to name it floor. And so what I'm going to do is that with this floor material selected, I'm going to go into edit mode, face select mode, and then I'm going to be selecting the bottom face, and then I'm going to select this floor material and I'm going to be assigning it. Just press this assign button. Now if I change the color of this, you're going to see that this floor material is separate from this wall material. Now if I just go ahead and reduce the brightness of this wall material, it looks pretty good. But for this floor, obviously we need something like wood or marble or something like that. So for that, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be using a BlenderKit material. So I'm just going to go to BlenderKit materials, and I'm just going to search for wooden floor. Right, so I think that should be pretty good. Let me just wait for it to search. And so we need something which is pretty realistic, which this is not that realistic. This looks pretty realistic, and this looks too. So maybe that looks pretty good. Yeah, so you have a lot of these options and you can just choose whichever one you want. I would not recommend you to use procedural materials, because procedural materials generally look a little fake. So this one is procedural. I would recommend you to use materials which have been created with actual images. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be selecting this floor material right here, and I'm going to be clicking this what do you call it, material menu, this material option, and now it's going to basically replace that material in our in that material slot. So it's going to have that wooden floor, right? So that looks pretty good. One problem which I'm noticing, if I just go to my shading tab, you're going to see that the tiles are way too large. So I'm just gonna go inside my room, and I'm going to see that the tiles are pretty large. So what I'm going to do with this wood floor selected, I'm simply going to be pressing just selecting any one of these, and I'm going to be pressing Control T, and it's going to create a mapping node for us. If this does not work for you, then that means you don't have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled. So just go to Edit, Preferences, and inside this add-on, just make sure to search for Node Wrangler and just turn it on. It does come with Blender by default, but it's not turned on by default. So just turn it on, right? And I'm just going to be plugging this mapping node into the roughness and the normal, right? So because obviously if we scale this down and the normal and roughness are not scaling down according to that, then it's not going to look good, right? So obviously that is something which we have to do. Now with the scale, we can just reduce it. We can just increase it to something like 3. And the higher you set this number to, the smaller your texture is going to become, because it's going to be tiling that many times, right? So yeah, it works opposite. And now let's just go to our rendered view. Let's go to my scene. Let me just go to my scene. Let's see how it looks. All right, so on the first thing which I noticed is that this carpet does not look good at all. So I'm going to have to change that. And apart from that, I think we are looking pretty good. It's looking pretty realistic. And obviously we have to make some changes in the scene. However, apart from that, I think we are looking good. So I'm just going to go back to my layout mode. And yeah, so I'm going to be telling you about the second lighting method which we have in Blender, and that is going to be using an HDRI. So right now, I just want you to look at this. The scene looks pretty good. However, it's not that realistic, right? Because obviously we don't have a proper sunlight coming. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be just selecting this, and I'm going to be hiding it from the viewport and the rendered view. And I'm going to be bringing it outside of this weeping willow collection. And you know what? Let me just collapse all these collections so that we just make the scene a little more organized, right? And I'm just going to be taking this Materialiq inside that collection. I'm going to be naming this stuff. Yeah, so obviously you can make your names more serious if you want, but I just like to name stuff randomly, right? So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be using an HDRI. So for that, I'm just going to go inside my world properties, and I'm just going to be clicking this yellow dot right here in the color tab, and I'm going to be selecting environment texture. And now I'm going to be opening an HDRI file. So if you don't know what HDRI files are, basically there are 360-degree images which you can use to light your whole scene, and they are pretty good. They give you pretty realistic results, and I have some HDRIs right here. But if you want to download them, you can just simply go to polyhaven.com/HDRIs, and you can just choose any one of these, and they are going to give you pretty good effect, right? So there is that. You can just choose any one of these and you can download them. Obviously the higher quality you download, the better result you're going to get, but obviously the size is going to get larger as well. So the one which I'm going to be using is maybe this Outdoor Sun 2, something like that. So right now it looks pretty dark, and that is because if I just get out of my camera, you're going to see that the sun is right there. Okay, so the sun is right there, but our window is right here, right? So obviously we need to have the sun and the window aligned. So how exactly we do that? It's pretty simple actually. We just simply go inside our shading menu. If I just go to my shading tab, and now if I just get out of my camera real quick, and I'm just going to go to this side, because obviously we need to have the sun right there, somewhere right there, so that it affects it basically gives us a good result. And now inside the shading tab, what I'm going to do is that instead of object, I'm going to switch to world, and now we're going to have this environment texture, this HDRI, which we can modify with nodes. So I can just simply select this, press Ctrl T, and it's going to create a mapping node for us. And now we can just tweak the rotation Z so that we rotate the sun with some HDRI, and something like that should probably be good. Let me just go back to my camera, and now you're going to see that it's going to have a pretty good effect. However, again, we have a lot of options with this. You can even rotate it in the Y and the Z axes. Yeah, so generally this is going to give you a lot more realistic results. However, the scenes are darker with this. So what we can do is that we can maybe combine both of them. We can have an HDRI and an area light as well. I'm just going to turn on that area light. Obviously it's way too dark, way too bright for now. Or is it? I think it's fine. Yeah, maybe we can tweak it down to something like 600. Actually, you know what? 1000 was fine because it is sunlit and it should be bright. Right, so I think that is fine. Another thing, another way to basically check your exposure to make sure that your scenes are not overexposed, you can simply go to your render properties, go down to color management, and then you can set the view transform instead of filmic to false color. Now, if I just do that, you're going to see that we're going to have our scene is going to become very weird. And so basically red or orange is overexposed, right? And blue is underexposed, and green is somewhat fine, and gray is basically the perfect area. right? So what I'm going to do for with this is that the problem with this scene is that there's a lot of variation, right? There are some scenes which are overexposed, some parts which are overexposed, and some parts which are underexposed. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to try to increase the strength of this HDRI. That does not help that much. And maybe we can increase the size of our area light. I'm going to go back to my layout mode because we had 2 viewports in that, so that we can tweak our whole scene. And I'm going to be increasing the area of this light, and that's going to help with some of these overexposed areas. However, then I guess I'll have to increase the intensity or something like 1400 maybe, so that we light up these areas as well. Now let me go back to my regular filmic mode, and I think it looks pretty good. Yeah, I think it looks pretty decent. The only thing which I am concerned about right now is the contrast of this image. It looks very flat and there is basically no contrast to it. So I'm going to be setting this look to high contrast, and you're going to see that it immediately makes the whole image pop and it makes it look pretty good. One thing which I am going to be doing now is that I'm going to be increasing the intensity of the HDRI. So another option to do this inside of this layout mode is by simply selecting this option right here, and you can basically have any sort of tab open right here. So I'm just going to be opening a shader editor and going back to world, and now we can simply adjust the strength of the HDRI without even having to go to the shading tab. So let me just increase the strength to maybe 2, and the strength of this light to maybe something like 3000, because generally these scenes are pretty dark, pretty bright. And one thing I can do is that I can maybe place this light so that, actually never mind, I think that looks very fake and unrealistic. Yeah, I think this looks pretty good, and it is giving us a pretty good effect, right? So these areas might be slightly overexposed, but I personally think they look good. And these false color and like tools like that are just there to guide you and to help you, right? Of course, the final decision is going to be made by the artist, which is you, right? So I think we are looking pretty good. The only thing which is not looking good is this carpet. So I'm going to be selecting that. Where exactly is it? So I'm going to be selecting this long hair carpet, and I'm going to be deleting that. And I think we're better off without it. Yeah, I don't think we need a carpet right there. I'm going to be selecting, let me just delete it again. Let me just delete this collection as well. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to be selecting this chair as well. And I'm just going to be moving it slightly like that, and I'm going to be scaling it up. Maybe move it something like that and rotate it. Right, so I think it looks pretty good. And I don't like the texture of this this wall, this bookshelf, and also these books as well. So what I'm going to do for that is that I think they're basically facing the wrong direction. So I'm going to be selecting the books and rotating them 90 degrees in the 180 degrees in the z-axis. Yeah, now they're looking pretty good. Let me just get out of my rendered mode so I can easily move them. Something like that should be fine. And then just rotate this as well 180 degrees, and I'm going to be placing these books right here. Perfect. Now let's go back to our rendered mode and let's see how it looks. All right, I think we are looking pretty good, and the result which we have gotten so far is looking absolutely amazing. The only thing which I think is left to do, maybe if I get out of my camera, you can look at this area as well. Yeah, so this TV area looks amazing as well. How about this table? It's looking pretty good as well. The only thing which I think we are missing currently is plants. Well, plants, we do need some more. So I'm gonna maybe I'm gonna add a plant right there. So let me just search for let me first go back to my viewport shading mode. Let's go back to the models menu and let's search for plants. And so something like that probably, or maybe I kind of like that. However, the problem with this is that it's way too wide and we don't have that much space in our scene. So maybe something like that. I'm gonna have to scale it up. Let me just bring it out of that collection Right click, select objects, scale it up, and then of course place it properly. So I'm going to place it right there. Let's see how it looks. And so it's not looking bad. However, the problem with this is that the pot is way too large. So I'm just going to scale down the pot, and we can't really do that, right? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to edit mode, and then I'm going to be scaling it out because then it's not going to affect the rest of the scene. Right, so I think that looks pretty decent. And I guess we are good to go. The only thing which I don't like now is this painting. I think it's I think it doesn't sit well with the scene. So I'm just going to be getting rid of that, and let's add another painting. And maybe we can add something simple like that, and it's going to cover more area as well. So I think that should be a good option. You can, however, choose whichever one you want. Right, so we have that, and let's just go back to my viewport shading mode. Let me select this painting, GC, move it up, and 90 degrees, and 90 degrees in the y-axis as well. And then I'm going to be moving it back like that. Let's render it, and let's see how it looks now, and then we're going to be scaling it up. Let's scale it up. GZ. Maybe move it down. And yeah, so I think it looks pretty decent. Let's see. Let's have a final look at it. And yeah, I think our scene looks pretty good, and that's basically going to be it. If by the way you have an NVIDIA RTX graphic card, then I would recommend you to go to your render settings and just turn on denoise, and set this to optics denoising. That's really fast, and it gives you very good results. So of course now it's looking terrible, but it's gonna as it gets more samples, it's gonna look pretty good, right? So I think our scene is basically done, and now what we can do is that we can simply go ahead and render it out. So obviously, if you want to render an animation, you can do that as well. However, it's gonna take a lot of time to render this animation, so I'm just gonna be rendering a simple a simple still frame. So for this, I'm just gonna go to my sampling menu and just render. Under this render option, I'm just gonna set it to I'm gonna set these samples to something like maybe 2000, because this will require quite a lot of samples, because obviously it is a very heavy scene. One thing which I am gonna change though is the color of this bed sheet, this quilt right here. So let me just disconnect this node, and let's set this color to a darker one. Alright, so I just set the color of this to be a slightly darker color, and I think it looks much better. So now I'm just going to go ahead and render this scene out. Another thing which you could do is you could maybe make this darker as well. So I'm just going to I'm just going to go to my shading menu. I think it is open right here, so I'm just going to be using this one. And so the way to make textures darker in Blender is simply by using by pressing Shift A to create a node first, and then you can just simply add a bright contrast node, and then you can tweak the brightness of that node, brightness of that texture. So I'm just gonna make it pretty dark, something like that, so it does match with the bed as well. And so this one as well. Let me just plug this back in, and let's just turn down the brightness of this, because then it's gonna have that fabric texture as well, and it's gonna look a lot better. Yeah, so I think something like that seems to be good. And I think we are done with our scene, guys. Thanks a lot for watching this. I hope you learned something new. And yeah, without any further ado, let's go ahead and press render and render image. And now it's rendering. And yeah, once it is done, just be sure to go to image, save as, and just save the image, save the render wherever you want.